So let's get into Bill Gates' endgame. The deliberate construction of a total surveillance state that eradicates human interaction, replaces flesh and blood relationships with artificial overlords, and stems directly from his cold transhumanist philosophy as one of the ultimate elitists and globalists who views humanity not as something sacred to nurture, but as an inefficient, overpopulated biological nuisance to be monitored, managed, culled, and ultimately rendered obsolete. This is his ultimate goal with all of this. And this is not a speculative fever dream. This is the man's own documented words in videos, Davos panels, and foundation grants. The same man who bankrolls ID 2020 digital identity programs tied explicitly to vaccines, who casually predicts in primetime interviews that within a decade, AI will render humans unnecessary for most things. Freudian slip, he just wants most people gone. And at the World Economic Forum, he's preaching about a future where elite-driven silicon intelligence supplants the messy, unpredictable interactions of real people. Because in his worldview, the fewer autonomous humans breathing free air and forming unmonitored bonds, the easier it is to impose the controlled, depopulated, bug-eating, chemtrail-breathing dystopia he has engineered across every previous front. Let's begin with the surveillance apparatus he has openly championed. Because Bill Gates does not whisper about digital IDs in back rooms. He's actually very public about it. He broadcasts the blueprint in public forums and funds its very rollout through the very same Gates Foundation machinery that poisoned agriculture and pushed these experimental jabs onto us. In March 2020, he had a Reddit AMA preserved in full transcript and widely circulated, and he stated without equivocation, eventually, we will have some digital certificates to show who has recovered or who has been tested recently, or when we have a vaccine who has received it. That single sentence tells me everything. Delivered by the man whose foundation partners with Gavi and ID 2020 became the seed for global vaccine passport systems, biometric registries, and the integration of health data with financial accounts, farm records, and climate compliance tools. You know, for so many of you who were in metropolitan cities like I was in New York City during COVID-19, the pandemic. Well, that entire apparatus of having vaccine cards and the constant mask wearing as well. Well, who was one of the main culprits that normalized that ethos? Perhaps it is an evil billionaire who has a goal of depopulating the masses and is directly tied to the mass dissemination of that very vaccine. That disgusting surveillance system, society, culture that we were so disgusted by, we just wanted to eradicate because of how unhuman and anti-God it is, was promoted by this man. Look at ID 2020, launched in 2016 and collaborating directly with Gates, backed entities like Gavi and the Bangladesh government, explicitly rolled out programs using immunization as the entry point for digital ID records. Computerized records stored in centralized registries that track vaccination status from birth, linking to payment systems as well, and expanding into every facet of economic and social participation. Digital ID, and fact checkers scramble and call it ethical and privacy protecting, yet the architecture is unmistakable. It's a global digital ID infrastructure funded in part by Gates' money that turns every human being into a trackable node in a surveillance grid, where access to travel, banking, food purchases, or even basic services requires biometric authentication and real-time compliance with whatever expectations the elite class decrees. And this is Gates' money. Extrapolate without mercy, as I always say. Be ruthlessly logical here. Look at the evidence. Look at all his prior assaults. The same digital certificates that certify are the ones forcing you to swallow bug protein, are the ones making you take this mRNA cocktail and trying to log your carbon footprint. They're the same ones causing chemtrail exposure and normalizing this, while the fertility metrics continue to plummet. Gates even has personal investment in AI chips in startups with open AI partnerships announced at Davos. He's flagging non-compliant citizens for debanking or restricted movement. This is what he wants. Recent foundation commitments exceeding $200 million into digital public infrastructure across a dozen countries, explicitly tying to biometric IDs to bank accounts, health records, agricultural data, creating the perfect closed-loop control system for an elitist globalist who has already bought the farmland, who has already dimmed all the skies, and pretends to be philanthropic. Can you imagine? This is not benevolence. This is the surveillance state he desires, where human interaction is rendered optional and even risky, because every conversation, every handshake, every unlogged meeting becomes a potential vector for deviation from the script of his control freak mechanism. And make no mistake, the eradication of human interaction is the explicit goal in conjunction to depopulating the masses. This is what roots in Gates' transhumanist philosophy. Because why tolerate the inefficiency of people talking face to face, forming communities, or reproducing organically when silicon can simulate it better, cheaper, and under total elite oversight? Especially because you hate all these people. In multiple 2025 interviews preserved all across these video broadcasting platforms, like when he went on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, Gates declared that advances in AI will mean humans won't be needed for most things. Within the next decade, he hopes that great medical advice, great tutoring will become free, commonplace, and that AI will replace doctors, teachers, engineers, and the very roles that once required human empathy and connection.
The era we've come to is sort of the vision that computing was expensive and it basically became free. The era that we're just starting is that intelligence is rare, a great doctor, a great teacher. And with AI, over the next decade, that will become free, commonplace, great medical advice, great tutoring. And it's kind of profound because it solves all these specific problems, like we don't have enough doctors or, mental health professionals. But it brings with it kind of so much change. What will jobs be like? Should we, just work like 2 or 3 days a week? So I love the way it'll drive innovation forward, but I think, it's a little bit unknown. Yeah. Will we be able to shape it? And so legitimately, people are like, wow, this is a bit scary. It's completely new territory.
I mean, will we still need humans?
Not for most things. We'll decide.
I mean, hosting a talk show, definitely. You're gonna need, really?
Well, we'll decide, like baseball. We won't want to watch computers play baseball.
That's correct. Yeah.
And, so there'll be some things that we reserve for ourselves. But in terms of making things and moving things and growing food, over time, those will be basically solved problems.
First of all, when he means we'll decide, he means he will decide. Him and his cronies, him and the selected few will decide. And secondly, what about artistic passion, creativity, home-cooked meals with your families, unforgettable memories, traveling together with your loved ones? All of these things that he wants to just automate so that we're disconnected from the process. All passions, all emotional investment, all character integration to become a more holistic person from the climb of striving excellence. Where does all of this go? Well, he wants it all flushed down the drain. This is his belief. He has not hidden this in any of these talk shows whatsoever. Like I'm telling you, every time I pull up a Bill Gates conversation with like a mainstream host kind of character, it's always the same thing. Human beings are obsolete. We need to surrender to the machines. We need to become the sex organs of the machine world. And as he talks with such boasting confidence, who elected you, Mr. Gates? Nobody asked for you. And you just double down. You just speak so nonchalantly about circumnavigating and squashing everything that the human spirit feels endearment towards. And he just doubled down at Harvard as well. I remember when he was speaking at this Davos panel, stating that AI will handle everything by making things and moving things and growing food and basically leaving humans to decide only one thing: what type of entertainment they want to be scintillated by the same system, by the same bog and morgue, implying the bulk of existence, the labor, the care, the relationships, the sacrifice you give one another. All of this should be offloaded to machines. This is not neutral futurism. This is the philosophy of a man who sees flesh and blood humanity as obsolete overhead. He has an anti-human stance that flows directly from all the equations that he pushes with this new vaccine and reproductive health services, mathematically, population reduction experiments that he keeps putting in front of us. All of this. He just wants less need for human-to-human bonds and the AI to fill that void while the surveillance grid ensures that no one steps out of line. That's the real agenda. And his elitist globalist perch at Davos and through WEF collaborations reveals his true transhumanist core. Gates partners with OpenAI for AI-driven healthcare in Africa. Again, a test starter. We will see after he gets what he wants here, which will fail, he will venture onto the Western states. Watch. And meanwhile, just like the playbook, he acts like he's helping. He's going across all these panels talking about superhuman AI that will stop us from falling into pitfalls and all these plateaus, and that the future will belong to those of us who work with machine intelligence that is just helping his bankroll in this chilling formation captured in all of his discussions about the matter and the implications about his true heart that only become more clear, that AI agents will become our executives, our therapists, and our friends. rendering organic human relationships redundant in a world where the elite will dictate whatever biological needs human beings have. This hatred of humanity is not some rhetorical flourishing, okay? It is the logical endpoint of a man who genetically engineers dependence in sick poisonous food, aerosols and atmosphere for control, injects experimental biologics for population management, and now deploys digital IDs and AI to ensure the surviving remnants interact only through approved, monitored, and artificial channels. And this is beyond social media, okay? This is plugging yourself into the matrix. Bill Gates' surveillance state is not coming, actually. It's here in the form of ID 2020. The digital certificates are on the way. It's only gonna go further into that direction. Just watch. There will be health passports again. There'll be foundational funded digital public infrastructure that ties your body to your bank and your behavior into one trackable ledger. Watch, and we'll do it willingly because we think it's good for us. It will limit all human interactions into a digital node, and human beings will be felt as not necessary for medicine, education, labor, or companionship. It will all be under the watchful eye of the same grid. This transhumanist philosophy, elitism, globalism, anti-humanism, all of this at its rotten core, and it stems from the same calculated population reduction desire through vaccines, and now calculated with this desire of looking at human beings as optional extras in a machine-managed world. The man who owns the seeds, sprays the skies, and jabs the arms now wants to own your digital soul and replace your neighbor with an algorithm. So I say, reject all this. Reject the certificates. Smash these digital passports. Refuse the AI nanny state. Humanity is not obsolete. Bill Gates and his silicon priesthood are the ones who must be rendered irrelevant before the last unmonitored conversation, the last untracked embrace, and the last free human breath disappear into the surveillance cloud he has so meticulously built. The war is total, and the evidence is on record, and the time to expose and dismantle this anti-human machine and the mechanic behind the scenes needs to be done as soon as possible. And I only ask you one thing, and I will end the series with this question. How does a guy get to block the sun, cover your organic meat and fruit in film, insert fake meat into the supply chain, release bioengineered mosquitoes and ticks, all without your consent? How is he not looked upon as the world supervillain?